Good day, everyone. I'm Ron Gant with Infotech. Welcome to Infotech's panel discussion on BIM for infrastructure. One of the hottest topics in our industry today is building information modeling and what it means to infrastructure and how it impacts our professional lives. We're fortunate today to have three of the industry's leading experts to join us for a panel discussion on BIM and the perspective it has for consulting engineering, federal highways, and the U.S. DOT. I will let each of our experts introduce themselves. I'll allow Alexa go first, then David, and then Tony. So, Alexa, if you would introduce yourself.
Hi, Ron. Thanks for inviting me to this conversation. My name is Alexa Mitchell, and I am the Transportation BIM Program Manager for HDR. And my background is in highway design and construction.
And David?
Thanks, Ron. Thanks, Infotech. I'm David Unkefer. I'm with Federal Highway Administration's Resource Center, Construction and Project Management Team. My primary role with BIM has been as primarily with everyday counts and deploying, I guess, some of the pieces of BIM from 3D models to other pieces of BIM, and then also Federal Highways has created a BIM roadmap, and we've also contributed to a couple of pooled funds. So I'm sure I'll be talking a little bit about that as we go.
And Tony?
Thank you, Ron. It's great to be with this great panel here. My name again is Tony Kratofil. I'm the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Engineer for Michigan DOT, which essentially means I work with our team that deals with the whole life cycle of projects, whether it's project development, construction, or even when we think about maintenance and operations, how we can use the digital information that we're creating these days to improve the processes all the way through the life cycle of infrastructure.
And I just want to thank you all so much for joining us because you and your organizations are truly leaders in the industry, and I think our audience will get a lot out of hearing what y'all have to say. And so let's get started. We'll start with talking about building information modeling, of course, because that's the main theme here. And so much of our industry discussion today is around BIM, and I don't think I need to define BIM because if you've not heard of BIM, you've been probably under a rock for the last 10 years. So I want to hear what you guys have got to say about that. And we'll move from there to talk about open data standards and how you cannot be successful in BIM or digital project delivery by working in silos. Collaboration and data standards are key to eliminating those silos. And I want to get you guys to talk about those, and then the last thing we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about the new legislation that's there, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, or IIJA, as everybody likes to shorten that up to. So enough of the build up. Let's get started with our panel discussion, and I will rotate it through each one of our panelists to talk about the questions, and then allow each one to comment on others' comments as we go through. So let's start with Alexa. Alexa, I've known you and HDR for a long time, and you guys, y'all have been at the forefront of infrastructure BIM in the U.S. from the very beginning. What in the world convinced HDR that BIM was something worth the effort to implement company-wide on transportation projects?
That's a great question, Ron. And as you know, HDR is an employee-owned company. And so as employee owners, we are all part of affecting change within an organization, right? And so at HDR, of course, we're an engineering company, so we design projects and we work with owners in delivering projects. And so we're always looking for ways to get better at what we do. We like to collaborate. That's just our culture. Our culture really thrives on these values of collaboration and innovation. And so when we look at BIM, it's just a really great tool for us to find more efficient ways to work with each other and to collaborate to create better products for our clients. But in general, we're very much encouraged as part of our culture to be innovative as possible. And so much that in 2016, our CEO challenged us as a company to make BIM part of what we do every day, which that meant, let's figure out how to use BIM and 3D model technology as much as possible to manage risk. And really, that is the first step into what drove us into using BIM. It's really another tool for managing risk on projects. Yeah.
Okay. David, Tony, you hear how someone in the private industry has made such a commitment to BIM. Any comment on what Alexa had to say from the regards to the private industry and impact on you guys?
I guess I would just say that, Federal Highways understands that it's really this is, if anything, BIM is such a big concept that collaboration that Alexa's mentioning really needs to extend, broadly to our whole industry, particularly in the highway side. We're a little behind in some ways, compared to the vertical construction and our neighbors, in other countries. So, we are all about trying to bring the stakeholders together because we see things nationally, and that's what we're trying to do. So, really glad for partners like HDR, strong states like Michigan and others that are kind of proving out things. So,
well, and I would agree with what David said, and I think state DOTs in particular, or any government entity, is always a little bit slower to change for lots of reasons. Some of it's just bureaucracy, but some of it is just also the realities of we're stewards of the taxpayer dollars. We've got to deliver a program, and it's hard to sometimes implement change. So when we have partners in the private sector who are performing work for us and are maybe leading the edge or pushing the envelope, it actually helps us get to the end game a little bit sooner, right? And so I think it's fantastic what Alexa was talking about and the challenge within her company to look at how BIM can be applied in everything they do in everyday types of activities. So in the end, it helps the public sector as well.
That's excellent. And Tony, you actually kind of set up the next question for me that I'm going to give to David here, and it's very similar to the question for Alexa. And one of the things that Federal Highways has done that I actually remember going to the very first one many years ago is the Everyday Accounts program, and it's really evolved over the years. David, how has the BIM impacted what's going on in the public sector and what you do in the Everyday Accounts program?
I think, Ron, that BIM is kind of a complex idea if you think of it. And so what it's like Tony said, there's a life cycle aspect to the data, but there's also a delivery aspect of using digital practices to deliver projects. And so the impact to the public sector has initially, it was market driven. The DOTs and their consultants and the contractors found ways to use the model for powerful productivity improvements. In design, you could look at things in 3D. You could consider clashes and other types of use cases. And in construction, they figured out how to run machines in an automated way, automated machine guidance using GPS. So, I mean, there was just those kinds of things beginning in the, I guess I'll call it the project delivery side, design to construction, many other benefits, but that's how it began. And then it has broadened as the digital tools and practices, the Internet of Things and the cloud and so forth have become more available to us, to this idea of getting a life cycle of asset information to allow for better decision making and potentially automation, artificial intelligence applications. I mean, really, when you get to data, the opportunities are pretty limitless, and we're still probing those. But just this year, I was working with Building Smart, who is the, I guess, the manager of the IFC standard that we probably will hear more about. And, two of the projects that were submitted from Germany and China essentially were fully interoperable. I mean, they are pushing the envelope in terms of how that life cycle of data, can be shared. And so they, I guess what I'm trying to say is, in terms of how it's impacted the public sector is, it's maturing to the place where that true automation using data is a reality. It's just up to us to figure out, in particularly in the U.S., how to tap that better. And I'm sorry I'm taking so long on this, but as far as how it impacts everyday counts, that's Federal Highway's approach to promoting what we consider the most powerful, proven but underutilized initiatives. Okay, so every cycle, something about digital project delivery or BIM, has been selected. I mean, you can just ask yourself, why is that? Because they are so there is just so much power to that. And we, Federal Highways, have been trying to not only do everyday counts type of promotions of these digital approaches. For us, everyday counts 2-year cycle, so it's kind of like a bite of the elephant of implementation. But we also, I would call those more tactical efforts. And then separately, and we may talk about this in another question, but we're also looking at strategic efforts that are longer term, things that are, through research, through pooled funds. We did a global scan. So I'll stop there, but, in essence, it's power. We see the power of leveraging data, and Federal Highways sees things nationally. And we're going to help however we can to help the highway industry move forward in that area. So,
if I could just comment on everyday counts from a state perspective, how important a program that has been for us across all kinds of innovations, to not just like promote the innovations that you said are proven, but just not fully utilized, but to actually provide resources, right, and connect people who are practicing and using those innovations. And I think the name alone kind of speaks to the value of the types of innovations. Everyday counts. When I think of one of our first experiences with BIM and 3D models, it was a project on Woodward Avenue. It's kind of the spine of the Detroit area, where we had a private group that was proposing to build a streetcar. And we actually let them rebuild our roadway. We have jurisdiction for Woodward Avenue, so that we wouldn't be part of slowing them down on their delivery schedule. But they made the decision to invest in 3D models because they immediately realized that that was going to be so beneficial to them with the underground infrastructure when they're trying to build the above ground infrastructure. That they would be able to literally save an incredible amount of time. And for them as a private entity, time was money, right? And so every day counted to them. And what we learned in that experience with utility conflicts and utility relocation, having those 3D models, not only in the design phase, but probably more importantly in construction, allowed the construction inspector to kind of look at the 3D model, compare it to kind of what he's seeing in the field, share a digital image from his phone, and what might have in the past taken 3 weeks or 3 months to resolve was taken 3 days to resolve, right? That's huge when you're talking about major infrastructure and avoiding those types of delays and being able to resolve conflicts quickly and keep the progress on projects. So when I saw that, I was immediately sold, right? And that's kind of the point I think of everyday counts, right? Is how do you make this stuff real, as David said, to the folks that are really working with infrastructure projects. All the ideas can seem really kind of wonderful, but they can also seem kind of pie in the sky until you see the practical reality of how it makes our jobs a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't mind, Ron, me stepping in here, the Everyday Counts program has been a really great tool to provide the resources to the states, like Tony mentioned. I was part of the program when I was at Missouri DOT and worked with David. But I think it's really important to note too, to something that Tony mentioned earlier, that BIM and digital delivery, as they come through the Everyday program, we have the opportunity to talk to people and to understand the technology and kind of figure out the vision. But when it comes to the details, that's where I feel the consulting community working with the public sector really makes magic, right? Is being able to work with DOTs to solve those big challenges on how to implement BIM at the project level for the right reasons, right? How to determine what level of BIM you're going to implement on any project. And then if you are farther ahead, how do you take that enterprise-wise? So that's a big effort. And so I've been very fortunate to work with different clients, with Utah DOT on some of their pilot projects where we put these ideas into practice and we collect information to make the next generation of projects better. So taking how to use the model for certain things and then elevating it to maybe now is model is the legal document and we don't produce any sheets. So those kinds of things happen through pilot projects that go beyond the Everyday Counts program. And then, of course, looking at enterprise-wise, how can we help? How can we work together to help define a strategy and a path forward that makes sense for a particular DOT? Because not all DOTs are the same. And so that the strategy that you may hear from one DOT in an Everyday Count peer exchange may not work for your DOT. And so I absolutely love working with the Everyday Count programs and everything that comes about it, because I get involved in solving these problems and helping people apply things that they heard someplace else. And so I just wanted to add that.
If I could just wrap back around, the Everyday Counts really depends on proven, which means going to the pilots and the examples that Alexa and Tony were talking about. So, our role is sometimes just to bring together. One of our most popular products, I guess, is the peer exchanges, where we bring states together to share their successes, but also their lessons learned. And I just wanted to, I meant to mention, as you were talking about EDC impacts, we actually, I said there's been one in every cycle, and we are promoting one for EDC 7, which will be about data management. So I just mention it because if states that see this find that of interest, I would just say that, I don't know if there's still an opportunity to share your thoughts, but that's, we're trying to kind of go to the next step with Everyday Counts 7, which is already upon us, believe it or not. So thanks.
I really appreciate Tony and Alexa jumping in on the EDC program, because it's been a great program, and David did a great job talking about it there, and I really appreciate the support that the consulting community, vendor community, and DOTs have given to that, and it's been great for us. But Tony, you brought up the project in Detroit, and I actually had some friends that worked on that project, and I know some of the struggles that we had on that project. I was actually working for a different vendor at that time that y'all were doing that project, but the collaboration was was important to that project. We struggled with it with that. But now that AASHTO has come out, it's endorsed the IFC, the Industry Foundation classes, as a data transfer standard. If that standard was fully functional back when we did the Detroit project, I think it would have helped, because we had multiple consultants working on that, multiple vendors working on that project. What do you see, Tony, as the impact of the IFC standard as it's coming to fruition on the way that a DOT looks at projects like the Detroit project in the future?
Sure, that's a great question, and to just put context on it, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago, right, when that project was happening. So a lot happens, right? That's why we do pilots. That's why, we need to learn from the process, and I think we have come a long ways. Coming to agreement on this industry foundation classes, I mean, when you think about just the terminology, that we tend to always go to the acronyms, but think of the foundational words, right? Industry foundation. It's setting the foundation for everybody to work off of, right? Some level ground that we can all agree on in terms of file formats and kind of shared data formats and so forth. And it's similar, if you're not familiar with this stuff, or this technology seems far out to you, just think of PDFs, right? They were created so that we could share essentially text documents and be able to use those kind of interchangeably between a number of different programs or applications or interfaces. And it's really the same thing when we're talking about BIM, is being able to take this digital delivery information and share it across different applications and people with different skill sets or different applications or needs for the data, right? Different levels of expertise, which is good, right? That's actually what you want, is something that can be shared across that wide range of things and expertise, because you're not going to have everybody at the same level of ability to use certain technology, right? Our designers are going to be very expert at putting it together, but the guy that's operating the equipment in construction or a maintenance operator that is dealing with the digital twin after the fact, that is helping him kind of decide how he's going to take care of a repair situation, they're going to just be using different tools and using the data in different ways. So I think IFC enables that collaboration across the life cycle. It also, Alexa was talking about it. She HDR works for lots of different clients, right? And we all have different perspectives. Sometimes we don't control our decisions about IT and data. In our state, a lot of that stuff goes through a centralized IT program that's outside our department. And so you can't always expect to have the same thing everywhere you go, but you still need that collaboration. You still need that ability to basically have the same foundational elements wherever you go. And so I think IFC has been really integral to that. And AASHTO's endorsement of it gives it that kind of like seal from all the state DOTs, right? State DOTs are usually dealing with the biggest infrastructure that we have in the country, right? At least when it comes to horizontal infrastructure. And so when we kind of come to agreement on here's a standard, well, that sets the tone for the whole construction industry. I think, the fact that AASHTO has kind of come on board and said, this is something that we support is important. It helps going back to the life cycle parts of that with all the different AASHTO products too, right? So as digital delivery information starts feeding one way or another from AASHTO, now we've got this kind of foundational element of, what is that data? What does that framework look like for files and data sharing?
Okay, cool. David, Alexa, any comments on that?
Yeah, everything that Tony said, right on, right? I think the most exciting thing I've heard in the last few years was that resolution that AASHTO made for adopting IFC as the data exchange standard for digital delivery and BIM. and that's huge, right? I'm really excited about all the different things that are happening on that front. Now, I think I'm a realist, and the reality is that IFC has enormous promise, but it needs work. So, we're talking about a data exchange standard that uses a particular schema or way to organize the data that we're producing and then we're receiving and all that. But there are a lot more things that need to happen for that to be really implementable at the project level and at the enterprise level, including information requirements, right? So now that we know how to organize the models, what kind of information do you want to add to those model objects in your design files? And so on the bridge side, with the BIM for Bridges and Structure Pool Fund that David might have alluded to earlier, something really significant is happening next month, which is the first information delivery manual that lists all the property sets for each of those objects in the schema is going to be brought to vote as part of a ballot at the AASHTO Committee on Bridges and Structures in June. And I mentioned this because it is significant for AASHTO to set the tone, like Tony said, right? When that many states agree on a standard, everybody's going to follow it. Is going to make it easier for vendors, software vendors, to implement tools into the technology because they don't have to do it 50 different ways. Is going to help consultants to be able to choose that information, that whatever software they choose to, and deliver the products that are still usable by downstream users. So I just kind of wanted to add that there are a lot of things happening at the national level, in addition to the things that Federal Highway is doing. The Joint Technical Committee on Electronic Engineering Standards is working on some other components to help drive this advancement of implementing IFC at the practical level.
I guess totally echo what Tony and Alexa have said about the potential of IFC, but more is needed. But I will say that IFC has been around for a while, and it's being used within the vertical construction world more readily, maybe not as robustly as we are thinking about with lifecycle BIM, but it's, we are really looking forward to this standard being adopted or I guess pushed out through the ballot that is coming out, and then to all of that other groundwork that needs to be done. I think behind IFC is also the need for each organization to do some data governance type activities. I don't know if that's a fuzzy word for people, but even once you get things to IFC files, you still have to be able within your own organization to organize how you're going to use that data between the silos. And really, ultimately, I think that's going to be the part of the end game, is connecting the silos. Because right now, from what I can tell, and I've seen it in a number of places, every data owner has their own system, and they rarely are integrated. And so within a DOT or organization, they'll need to have some plan for how to organize that data, and then they can truly utilize IFC. The other thing about IFC is it really is going to take all of us. In the countries that we've seen more data exchange, maturity, I guess I'll call it BIM maturity, they have standards. They're sometimes a single country. We are 50 different states that are trying to work together. So the standard, the IFC standard, will be certainly a good start, and there are other standards that will go with it. That probably you're well aware of. that will help us, share that data more effectively. But those are just some thoughts on IFC from Federal Highways, I guess.
David, I want to get you to talk just a little bit longer because you've touched on several things on EDC that are really important. You talked about the fact that EDC is about promoting underutilized technologies, technologies that are already developed, not going out reinventing the wheel, and so to speak. One of the things that Tony just mentioned a minute ago is digital twins, which is something that's maturing rapidly within our industry. What do you see in the evolution of everyday counts of other existing underutilized technologies that may bubble to the top for EDC in the future?
Well, I guess I probably jumped the gun earlier, but for EDC 7 and toward that idea of data governance and better implementation of interoperable data, we're suggesting some kind of a data management initiative. So that would certainly help design and construction. If you've looked at a current BIM execution plan, you know how complicated it can be to share data among the different people that produce a project, and deliver a project. But yeah, I think something we're really trying to take bites of the implementation elephant that move us toward an open BIM, which is kind of that idea of being able to share data more seamlessly. So I think I'll just mention some more specific ideas that I think are going to move forward, like use of the design model as a contract document. Probably 7 or 8 states have done that. It's the beginnings of a more formal integration between design and construction. To your question about specific design and construction, everyday counts ideas, and so to be able to pass the model between design and construction, it would be powerful. It would open up some new workflows. I think that's kind of what Alexa's work with BIM for structures is about. It's that the handoff between design and construction, and so that is certainly one that I think is going to get some attention. We also have a pretty big gap right now with how DOT construction can use the model. So I think we're hoping, Federal Highways is hoping to see more tools. The designers use them pretty readily, and digital practices. Contractors are getting much more savvy, but DOT construction has not got many good tools for using the model in particular. I know they have e-construction tools, and those are helpful, but for using the model, I think that's a gap that we need to close, and it would allow us not only to for the DOT construction to use the model, but also to collaborate better with the contractor, as they try to work more, just together on project delivery. So,
David was talking about data governance, and we kind of frame it in Michigan in terms of enterprise information management, right? And putting the kind of rules of the road to data out there. And what's really interesting is how quickly we've gone from the point of not having enough data to having too much data, and how important it is to have one single source of truth for data, right? And that's why it's really important to be thinking about the different phases in the life cycle of infrastructure and how we can translate from one to the other, how the construction staff, as David said, is comfortable and has the tools available to work with the model themselves. And so I would agree that that's a gap area. I think that might be an area where our consultant partners could help us, right? If they are, as we talked about earlier, maybe able to push the envelope a little faster than the DOTs, but you're providing CEI services for us, helps our staff get up to speed faster as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. I couldn't agree more. There's an opportunity to test different tools. I will agree that that is a gap. There aren't very many tools available to test, but there are some, not perfect, but there is a lot of movement on that. You guys may be aware there is currently an NCHRP project that is out to evaluate 3D model viewers. And that's very near and dear to my heart topic. I helped write the research needs statement for that because I saw that 3 years ago was a need that we needed to start working on. But I do agree with you that we really need to start jumping in and making use of some of these new technologies to kind of prove a concept, right? That it does work, that we can collect this information and work with the owners to talk about, what information do we need to collect and what information we need for construction management versus handover, right? Because to the point of what David mentioned earlier on data governance and data management, that is a big topic that scares a lot of people. But, when I start thinking about it and I break it down, it's about asking who needs what, when, right? So if you're in construction, just tell me what you want, tell me what you need. And then I can track back to figure out where that information comes from. It may come from my model, but it may not come from my model, right? And is asking the questions to very individual groups of, tell me your pain points, tell me what information you need to make the decisions you make today, what information you have already and what information you don't have. And when you start looking at things from breaking it down to the simplest form, I think we get more traction than when we start looking at the whole thing, right? I mean, if we look at data governance at an enterprise level, that can be very complex. And so I always remind people that you don't have to do it all. You can start small and then make incremental steps towards data management.
Yeah, I think digital as-built, which is the current EDC 6 that I'm involved with, is kind of a step. It's trying to take a small bit of, what is the data that's needed in construction or out of construction to hand off, post-construction. And so it's really important that I think industry or DOTs and agencies would be amazed at how much data they are recollecting, and or duplicating or whatever. That if we get that governance, we will, that's contributed from construction and from each group around the life cycle. We just get everybody together and try to have some organization to these data systems.
And we're talking about a lot of changes. We're talking about a lot of evolution of our industry, in transportation, new technologies coming about, and I mean we're not even touching on some of the scary things like autonomous vehicles or what's going to happen in an electric car and stuff like that. That's a whole different topic to talk about sometime. But Tony, I don't think a lot of people appreciate how big a DOT is. Even the sparsely populated DOTs are huge in the amount of road they got to do, and the small area DOTs have huge population density. So every agency is just huge, and Michigan is one of the bigger ones. And we're talking about a lot of changes that you guys in the DOT community are having to face. How in the world are you guys managing all of this possibility of impact of changes in technology in our world in the DOTs?
Well, I don't know that there's a good answer to that question, right? I think, in fact, I was reading a quote a couple of days ago about how we don't always know where we're going until we get there. But the reality is we need to try to set a vision for that. I know David talked a little bit about kind of a roadmap or a path forward. That's something we've been talking a lot about it in Michigan. Not just a roadmap for us in the DOT, but for the industry, right? And so it's a shared vision of where where are we now, and where are we going? I like what Alexa was saying about having those conversations with different people, different stakeholders and users of the information. Where are your pain points, right? But what's difficult today, so that we're not just like trying to implement technology for technology's sake, but we're actually trying to solve problems, right? Help people do their jobs better and easier. And so I think, that's really kind of our next path is engaging a broad spectrum of the industry, contractors, consultants, different elements within the DOT to say, where do we want to be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now? Where is the future of all this going? I think that helps people then manage when they see different phases of things roll out is, oh, we're here on the path, right? This is the next evolution. Okay, I can see where we're going and know that we're on this path that we kind of all agreed to. But one of the other things I think is really important is, yes, there are DOTs or consultants, there's contractors that are all at different comfort levels, and there's some that are doing really well with this. There are others that aren't, right? They're small businesses. They don't have that capability. They could maybe be the biggest benefactors of some of this, but we need to, as part of this discussion, talk about how we bring them along too, right? What tools, what training, what support services can help them get to the point where we're lifting all the boats at the same time, right? So I'm excited about the notion of having that type of dialogue and getting to a shared vision of where we can be.
Cool. Before we move on to the topic of the IIJA legislation, I want to throw a question at Alexa because of HDR's commitment to BIM and using it company wide. There's a stigma in the industry that BIM's for big projects, is for big companies, is for big DOTs. You guys get to work on projects of all sizes. You work with clients of all sizes. How scalable is something like BIM from smaller to medium projects?
BIM is scalable if we start asking the right questions. Like what Tony was saying, one of the things when people say we want to use BIM, I come in and say, okay, what problem are you trying to solve with BIM? So what are the risks that you see on this project take place? And so when we start looking at that, every project, regardless of size, has some kind of risk, right? It could be a small intersection, but it so happens to be a very heavily traveled intersection. We had a project in Colorado that we were converting an intersection to a roundabout, and there were some bridges involved, but the construction was set up to be during school year, and that's where all the buses went through. And so we used BIM internally to work with the contractors. This was a CMGC project to just really ask for alternatives. Okay, so if we can't do this, what do you see doing? And we were just working with the contractor together collaboratively using this tool that made decision making much easier. And so we went from an initial design approach that was 4 phases into 2 phases, because we changed the design, we changed the way we were doing certain things. And while those decisions can happen without BIM really facilitates that conversation because you're seeing it. Once you see a picture, it triggers your mind on, no, that's not going to work, right? I don't know, as a designer, how many times a construction person told me, no, that's not going to work. You designed it that way, but that's not how it's going to be built. I think that BIM allows us to do that. So I really do believe that BIM is scalable as long as we understand that BIM is a tool to solve problems. And so don't force BIM to do it all, but to solve a particular item. And then look at digital delivery. When we talk about digital delivery doesn't mean everything has to be 3D. It just means it has to be digital, right? So, and you have projects that don't lend themselves to 3D modeling. They may lend themselves to 2D digital information, like a striping project or something like that. And you can carry that information digitally past design to construction into asset management. So I think we just need to think about BIM is a information modeling and not necessarily a 3D modeling technology. And when we look at the problem from that perspective, I think it is scalable.
That's a great perspective, Alexa, because when I do hear pushback from some of our folks, it's like it's not so much what I'd say what we think of as a small project. It could be a large dollar volume project, but it's a rural project. It's a simple thing. Back in my day when I was designer, we called it a log job, right? It was, we didn't produce plans. We put a cross section on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and just told the contractor, get out there and pave, right? But the notion that you can have a 2D or some simple digital delivery, it's not necessarily this big elaborate model, because that's not necessary, but still it's a digital delivery mechanism, is a great way to think of it. Thanks for that.
Yeah, we're trying with this EDC to get away from the idea that BIM is just the model. It's data, and the model has some, but there are lots of things that we can tap for doing digital, for making things digital. And from my perspective, I would ask somebody, is a smartphone scalable? I mean, because people figure out how to use digital tools if you give it to them. And I think the next generation is going to expect this, frankly. So if we just look at the facets of BIM and are careful and strategic about how we are deploying either on a program level or a project level, then I absolutely would agree it's very scalable. So
great input, and we're going to move to what I kind of call the lightning round, because we're going to talk a little bit about the IIJA, and I don't think anybody's memorized the bill yet to know everything that's in it, but it definitely, I think, has tremendous impact on our industry. And Tony, I'm going to ask you first, of the pieces that you've been able to look at, what are the most impactful pieces to your agency?
Well, first of all, IIJA is big, as you said, right? It's a big bill, and it's a good bill in that it provides us some sustainable funding for 5 years. But it starts hitting a whole different range of infrastructure that we're not used to seeing in typical surface transportation reauthorization, right? For Michigan, when we look at that and some of the policy priorities of not only just fixing kind of our core infrastructure, roads and bridges, but also addressing the needs of lots of users, and the ability to tap into money for things that are traditionally underground. So, water quality, drinking water quality, stormwater resilience, and climate change resilience. Trying to incorporate broadband or the electrical grid that supports EV charging, right? All those things kind of lend themselves in our mind to looking at kind of a Main Street strategy. And for the reason I talked about the Detroit project, digital delivery and 3D models are going to be so important to delivering those types of projects. And so I see it as actually kind of a leverage point to maybe accelerate where we're going with all of this. I think the other thing that's a particular challenge for DOTs will be for really any infrastructure owners and operators is the amount of money in the bill that is tied to discretionary grants. And while there is not an expectation that every project is shovel ready, right, and ready to go out the door, there is an expectation for shovel worthy projects, and there is an expectation if you get a discretionary grant that dirt's going to fly in a couple of years, right? Folks aren't going to expect that it's going to take 7 or 8 years to develop something. And so one of the advantages I think that BIM gives us is the ability to get things moving faster, right? I think of an example of a job. We had a section of freeway that was literally falling apart like a cheap suit on us when I was a region engineer, and we had a major infrastructure that project was going to start on a competing corridor, if you will. And so we needed to get this other road rebuilt very quickly. And quite frankly, our consultant, who was more capable than us in this stuff, came to us and said, you know, we can deliver a 3D model on that faster, and that will get us to have a contract in place and be able to complete the work. And so I think when we start talking about, you know, discretionary grants and having some uncertainty about when funding is coming, but then also an expectation to deliver quickly, that the BIM can be a real tool to help us get there. The last thing I'd touch on, and I think, you know, every sector of the labor market is seeing this, but it's really true in our transportation industry, is with all this new investment and the shortage of workers, how this can help us actually deliver, right? We talk about it in terms of productivity gains, but I was having a conversation with one of our guys that works on this stuff just last week, Scott Douglas, and we were talking about how this literally was saving hundreds of hours in design effort, right? And when we're struggling to be able to hire people, right, and fill positions, yet we have this bigger program to deliver, it may be the only way that we can deliver the program, right, is because we don't need the 10 people that we thought we have to be more productive. I've got 7 people and I've got this program to deliver. It's the only way I can. It's a workforce imperative. So it really started opening my mind to saying, hey, it's not just that cool thing that we want to get to. It may be the, you know, it's the pinch point, like Alexa was saying. It may be the reason we need to do this, is that's the way we're going to get it done.
And David, from the Federal Highways perspective?
Well, first, I think we're hearing that, you know, the bipartisan infrastructure law, IIJA, is the opportunity of a generation in terms of the funding. So it's up to us to leverage those dollars the best we can. And right now we're going to be fighting against some other market forces, and including the workforce challenges that Tony mentioned. So I don't think I could have said it better, that some of the digital tools likely are going to be the, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, you know, where we are needing to use better, you know, tools that make us more productive for a lot of these reasons. And so I just couldn't agree more with that aspect of it. And the other piece that is in the bill, actually, and to the point of a discretionary grant, is there is specifically a grant there for advanced digital construction management systems. And it's $20 million per year, $100 million total over the 5 years. And it's Congress and FHWA's, USDOT's way of saying, we got to move this forward, folks, because it really is going to make a difference in how we do our business, how we deliver and steward the public funds as we, you know, are delivering projects. So that program is a very specific, you know, example of the USDOT's commitment to advancing BIM. It's called Advanced Digital Construction Management, but if you read it closely, it talks about interoperable data and, you know, making the entire life cycle process more seamless, including the construction, which is where we tend to create the asset. But so I think those are key things from Federal Highways and USDOT perspective in terms of bill that I'll mention.
And Alexa, I don't think this is one of those cases where it's a trickle down. I think especially Tony talking about the labor challenges they have and stuff like that. This has got to pour down upon the consulting and contracting community. How do you guys see this impacting y'all?
Oh, yeah, it's definitely something that we think about very, very much lately. Is, you know, we are having the same challenges everybody is with workforce shortages, right? And so it's a very competitive market right now. I can tell you that people leaving and jumping ship and going to places. And so we're going to have to be very smart about how we conduct business to deliver these projects. And the technology is one thing that is going to help us do what we can with the resources that we have. You know, in the absence of being able to add more people, we need to work smarter. But the other thing that is going to enable us to do that is if we start thinking more flexibility. You know, today we deliver projects, we have certain standards and certain deliverables that we are, you know, required to do. And so I think as a consultant, you know, we're looking at ways to improve the process, right? So do we really have to do this? Or why do we have to deliver this particular file or this particular thing? Can we deliver something different? Can we provide the same information in a different manner? Just being open to change the process, right? Just because the things that we do today have been based on a document-based process. And so, for example, if we're looking at reviewing documentation, reviewing plans at a particular submittal, what if we start delivering the models in an environment where you can collaboratively make the reviews and not deliver the sheets for this interim, right? Mm-hmm. How can we do that? Is that an option on the table? I think when you start pushing innovation at that level, just to improve the process, to be able to do more with the time and the resources that you have, we're just going to have to make some tough decisions and kind of push the envelope to do that.
I could just make one more comment on the workforce piece, because we're talking about it right now in terms of kind of like our immediate workforce, whether it's in DOT or HDR or federal highways, but also the workforce in the like construction trades, right? I've spent a lot of time in my career trying to help the industry recruit people into the trades work, because there's a shortage there as well. And when you're thinking about digital natives coming out of school, right? All they know is their cell phones and all that stuff and gaming. You know, the image of the construction industry is that it's not very high tech, when the reality is it's incredibly high tech, right? And so we need to do maybe a better job of leveraging or marketing, if you will, that it is a high tech industry, and there's a great opportunity for people to apply their interest in advanced technology and modeling and using those kind of cool tools to build really cool stuff, right?
Well, thank you all so much. And I mean, there's a reason we invited you guys, because you truly shined as leaders in the industry, and I appreciate that. But you know, anytime we have an open discussion like this, for me, there's always something that comes to mind that I didn't get a chance to share while I was doing that. So I'd like to give each of you 1 to 2 minutes, that if there was anything that you thought of as we were going through this that you would like to add to it, give you an opportunity to add to it. And we'll let Alexa go first, then Tony, and then David. If you'll bring us home, that'd be great. So Alexa, anything you'd like to add?
Yes, thanks, Ron. There's so many things, right, going through my head right now, but related to how we're going to be able to face the challenges ahead with all these shortages in workforce and being able to develop new workforce. I want to add that, we need to start working more at the high school level, the university level. Let's go back to those tech schools. You know, I remember the days where a lot of people were to drafting schools where there could be a BIM program that is for non-engineers, right? It could be a digital construction program that is a 2-year program that could attract a lot of new people. And so I think we focus right now on the problem at hand, because it is. But I think there's an opportunity for all of us to work together as an industry, public sector, private sector, and academia, to figure out this problem long term, because this is not going to end. And we have a new generation that is larger than any other generation that we've seen coming into the workforce, that there's a lot of opportunities to recruit people. And I totally agree with Tony that it is a marketing campaign, right? It's like, I've been trying to convince my kids to get into technology and all this other stuff, and get this message that not everybody has to go to a university, college, and bachelor's degree. We need our trades. And there are some really cool things you can do with technology with those trades. It's a new area of a trade, right? Digital technologies to support construction. So just wanted to kind of end on that.
Thanks, Alexa. I don't know that I have anything new, Ron, to offer, but what really resonated with me through this discussion here today, which thank you for inviting me to be part of it, is just how much stronger we're going to be working together. We'll get there faster by working across the different segments of the industry, whether it's federal, state, local, consultants, contractors. If we're kind of all working together, setting that vision and then working through the issues and the problems we need to solve and the technology can help us with, we're going to get there faster. So that's the key to success to me.
Thanks, Alexa and Tony. Yeah, I think a couple things. One is from what we're seeing internationally, the U.S. is going to need to do some catch up, and in this area of digital practices. And I think we're making some good strides, but there's definitely some things to learn, and I just feel like that there's some good opportunity for us to do some peer exchanges even at the international level. There's just some really important breakthroughs that are occurring, and of course it's a smaller world, right? So and secondly, I really liked what Tony said about having an implementation plan. And I think maybe Alexa also talked about strategies. So it's where I've seen DOTs succeed in this is where it's not I guess I'll call it a secondary effort, to deploy digital practices, call it BIM. BIM seems a little fuzzy to some people, but just the more that a DOT puts some focus and resources on something that could impact their entire operation, through bringing digital into the way they work, the more powerful. But that has to be done with a plan and with a strategy. And so I really have seen, glad to hear Tony say that, and have seen DOTs succeed when they had more of a plan that breaks it down. Alexa mentioned that, to kind of break it down into more manageable deployment pieces that make sense for your organization. So I'll just close with that. It's just encouraging some kind of an implementation plan.
Tony, David, Alexa, I cannot thank you all enough for well, we went a little bit longer than we anticipated, but you stayed with us. The discussion was just so good. I couldn't bring myself to stay within the time limit that we thought we would do to. But thank you so much for your time, for the energy you have for our industry and what you do and your commitment. I've been involved in this technology side of our industry from both design and construction for a long time, and we seem to be always evolving. That's one of the exciting things, one of the great things about our industry. I'm so excited to see the silos get dissolved and things like BIM and digital twins and finally some data exchange standards that we can sink our teeth into, so that we ultimately move to that idea of the asset life cycle that agencies really need, because we're no longer building or doing just our individual little pieces of it. We're creating an asset that an agency has to manage, operate, support for multiple lifetimes. And I think we're moving forward with that. I love the way that we're all starting to collaborate, and how much things that David started talking about several years ago of e-construction and digital project delivery are coming to fruition. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. And everyone have a great day.